Namaste, Jai Bharat. Perhaps the least understood and most discussed philosopher may be Marx, Karl Marx. Many people have not taken him as a philosopher, though he, of course, was a philosopher. Even academic philosopher as well. He has his credentials in philosophy. He has been a student of the German stalwart philosopher Hegel, and he did his PhD in Epicurus, and then later created a philosophy of his own, which is he combined or he synthesized the dialectics of Hegel and the materialism of Feuerbach, thus creating something called as dialectical materialism. And then, of course, there is mechanical materialism, there is historical materialism, things like that function behind. But nonetheless, I don't think that many people have understood Marx, and I also don't think that many people have done serious reading on Marx. Fundamentally, because of Marx's problem himself, that he had been very highly romantic. One of the problems with Marx is very highly romantic, and of course speculative, because speculative you can't accuse him for, because the entire European thinking is speculative philosophy, and they don't have any other philosophy other than speculative philosophy. And what is other than speculative philosophy is what we have in Bharat, that is experiential, which belongs to different class with entirely distinct methodology and so on. So Marx, of course, is hated by everyone and hardly understood by people, including the so-called political parties of Marx. Marxist politics parties, whatever it is. They have very different versions of political parties all over the world, and each of them fail miserably because they haven't understood Marx. That's fundamentally the difficulties with them. These politicians also have not understood Marx. Someone who understood to great extent Marx is, one is Lenin, and he had successfully worked for some time. Of course, it can't last for a long time. There's an inherent difficulty in Marxian thoughts. And another person is who understood dialectics is Gramsci, Antonio Gramsci, the Italian. But then, apart from these two people, everyone has understood Marxism very partially. And in academia, of course, there are quite a few who use Marxism for their understanding. They're maybe not very seriously Marxists politically, but then they would use the tools of dialectics to understand certain things, and at times they are very successful. At times it just touches the surface even not very nicely. So the thinker who has not got any due is Marx. That's what I feel. Though there are people who are glorified him beyond a point which he doesn't deserve, but then where he deserves that he was not attended to. He was very poetic. Even his essays are poetic. His expressions are very poetic, and there are many strange thoughts with him. He says that that comes very close to certain aspects in Bharatiya Darshana. He says that man has something called as an inner law of reason. Of course, the materialistic outlook of Marx has gone to the extent of saying there is an inner law of reason within man. Of course, this he speaks about the inner law of reason in man. He speaks about it in his economic and philosophical manuscripts of 1844. And that, of course, he beautiful. Then another expressions are very interesting. He speaks about a situation where man's freedom is a hole in the air, H-O-L-E, hole in the air. So that is different situation he speaks about. So this saying that there's an inner law of reason in man is attracted me because it comes very close to the Hindu concept of Dharma. See, what really makes Hindu, of course, you must know that you should be knowing, you should be seeing that fundamentally the Hindus are little more disciplined in their personal lives, little more disciplined. and some of the Hindus are very, very serious and disciplined, that they don't do things which they think are not supposed to be done. They don't deviate. They are very kind of rigid. Now, this we call, because that's Hindu Dharma. The Hindu has multiple dharmas. Dharma, how to translate? It's a righteous kind of duty. Dharma is a kind of righteous duty. There are multiple dharmas. The dharma of a father, Pitra Dharma. The dharma of a son, Putra Dharma. The dharma of all roles in life. Whatever role we take in life, this is dharma built into it. That's a righteous performance, rightful performance, rightful existence. That comes very close to Marx thoughts about inner law of reason. He doesn't know about dharma, but he envisages a situation where there is an inner law of reason in man. Of course, that I think could be very easily called as dharma. And if dharma is active, you don't have to have many serious rules and laws to control a man to remain human. Otherwise, without these social laws, man is sometimes man, of course, it may be the case with many, not real human. They behave like animals. Minus this, you can think about the situation. Under adverse situations, when one feels that no, this is right, not right for me to do, I would do this, other than this, then the first that becomes person is dharmic. So the dharma is the one who enables one to be righteous. He is not doing it for anything else. He is just doing it because that should be his nature, and he realizes that that should be his nature to do so. This comes very close to Marx, inner law of reason. But with the beyond that inner law of reason concept, he doesn't go into, because he doesn't have the materials to think in those directions, or he is not equipped enough, sufficient enough to think about such things. But if in the Hindu philosophical tradition we have the concept of dharma. If Marx had ever used the concept of dharma, in all likelihood, this philosophy of Marx would have been different. There would not have been a dialectical materialism. It should have been dialectically something else. There is no other word. There is something else. I don't find a word, so I put dialectically something else. Interesting, because these things were not available to him. Had it been the case that these things are available to him, I wondered in which direction he must have thought, because Marxian thinking, the thinking of Marx is essentially very romantic, and it can go into any extent and any level and try to amalgamate things as it appeases or appeals to him. So there is this thing in front of us, inner law of reason and dharma appears to be one and the same thing. We can think about it in the future. You also might think about it. If you go into some kind of reading, it's interesting. Read that book of Economic and Philosophical Manuscripts of 1844, which, of course, that book, when Dewey Althusser comes later, another kind of structural Marxist, he would say, up to that point, Marx was one. From that point of manuscripts, Marx become different from the previous point. That is where up to he writes German ideology. Then it's a different Marx. He calls them as a scientific Marx, sometimes revolutionary Marx, and then the other one is ideological Marx and humanist Marx, etc. Makes distinctions. But read this book, Economic and Philosophical Manuscripts of 1844, which is very interesting. Is what you call discussion. We meet again some other time. Namaste, Jai Bharat, and Jai Shri Ram.